Marathon County Infrastructure Committee meeting to order for Thursday, August 5th. We will start with public comment. I've got a list of 4 people that are signed up for public comment, and if anybody else wishes to speak, we can do that at the end. When you come up, if you could come up to the microphone at the podium here, provide your name and address. First up is Alan Riemer. Actually, we'll have you go on the up by the table here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Riemer. My address is 240633 Kufall Road, Athens, Wisconsin. I feel very strongly about this. We are chasing a lot of, Marathon County likes to pride itself on tourism. We're chasing a lot of tourism money away, giving it to counties around us that are all open. Not only are we not doing our residents justice by they can't get onto the roads, so they got to go away from Marathon County. And we've got other counties that are not coming here because our roads aren't open and theirs are. I've heard a lot of talk on the incident rate. We are the largest county, so we are going to have the largest incident rate. I was born and raised on a dairy farm. I grew up on the roads. I was on the corner of A&H. We had 2 highways that we ran a lot with all kinds of machinery. All hours of the night. They talk safety. I don't feel that the UTVs are any more of a safety risk than a farmer, and I'm not trying to degrade farmers because we need farming. The farmers use the roads as far as noise and all that. It's a means of transportation. If you look at the UTVs, and I have one because I'm still actively in farming, I've got a yellow sticker on mine, so I can use the road anyway. So I really probably shouldn't care because it really doesn't mean anything to me as long as I'm doing my farming, but I do care. We have a very large Amish community with their horses. They are allowed to use the roads. They move a whole lot slower, and they're not marked near as well as almost all of the UTVs out there. I've heard some talk on opening, we'll open little sections. There's way more sections of Marathon County that should be open than the sections, and I do believe that there's sections that should not be open because of certain reasons, safety factors. As far as looking at larger, and I was told that by one of the board members, well, we'll just open certain sections. Again, there's way more miles of road that could be open than the smaller sections that could be closed. I do feel that the industry has came a long way. I think that, and this is sound right or not, that some of the accidents that are happening because of people trying to sneak to get where they need to go. So they're sneaking down the blacktop road, so they're driving faster than they should be to try and get there, which we all know how that goes, and I'm not saying it's right, but there's reasons in these county roads that could be open. There's no reason that you should have to sneak. If the farmer and the Amish and everybody else can use the roads and the cars and trucks, I believe that the UTV should be also. I can speak, I was a board member in the town of Halsey. We fought very hard to get our roads open while I was on the board. We got told that, nope, you're gonna have problems, we're gonna have this, you're gonna have that. We had problems, and there was a lot of good reason for that. We had a lot of problems in the township. Honestly, almost all of our problems went away once we opened the roads. And right now I belong to 2 different clubs. There's gotta be some teaching done to these people, but the one thing we talk in the clubs is help police yourself, and that's what we told the residents. You don't have a right, you have a privilege. You see something going on, talk to us, talk to somebody. And it worked very well for us, and I think it can work just as good for the blacktop roads. I believe from what I've seen out there, yeah, you're gonna have, just like anything, cars excluded, you're gonna have the ones that are gonna do stuff that they shouldn't do. But then you're gonna have the ones that understand that it's a privilege that are gonna help watch more than just Marathon County. Right now, with the blacktop roads being closed, nobody says too much. But I feel very strongly on that we should be allowed to use a bunch of the blacktop roads. And I still believe that there is certain sections that no, it should not be open. But there's way more that should be open than not open. Thank you much for your time.
Thank you, Alan. Next up is Kevin Clint.
Good morning, everybody. Kevin Clint from 126765 State Highway 153 in Stratford. I'm also with Al of opening up a lot of these roads and also extending the time period for operations of these ATVs, UTVs. Al did make a lot of points for the Amish and the farming community. I also am a member and strongly active with the Uplain River Rats. And I have 500 signatures here that feel the same way I do. We also went to the next step above it, working with the Wisconsin ATV Association on getting our trail ambassador programs to help police these roads for us that way too, so we don't lose this privilege. I guess, thank you for your time and everything that way.
Thank you, Kevin.
Do you want this?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next up is Richard Gums. Nope, turn it, you need to turn it on there.
Green light on it, Richard.
You gotta hold the mute button until it turns green. They all were working on it. Okay, Richard Gums, 104844 County Road A, Dorchester. I was a bit of the Pony Express this morning, as I did meet a guy from Athens and brought signatures from the Athens area, numbering like 500. They want that entered in their minutes, of course. I just wanted, I don't have an ATV, UTV. I don't do that, but I did want to mention about tourism, and we need to promote our restaurants and C-stores. Just talked to a guy that bought a camper here this spring. You know what? They can't go camping. There's no campsites open. If you don't register over a year in advance for a campsite, you can't park it nowhere. The ATV clubs and UTVs go for rides. A gentleman told me they went to Rib Lake area the other day. 48 vehicles. That's a lot of money being dropped off at the local restaurant and C-stores and such. I don't think we can ignore that in this time of a depressed economy for those people. So I think we got to start listening to the people that are in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. Last I have signed up is Judy. I'm not even going to attempt it.
Good morning, everybody. Judy Pay-Grazinski, 226690 Blue Jay Lane, Ringgold. I'm a familiar face. Jim said he's going to give me a name tag pretty soon. I'm here for the ATV stuff. In your packets, I'm sure you all have this highway summary thing and how many vehicles are registered. That's a lot of economy, and most of those accidents that happen are truly driver error. They fall off the road, they flip over. They drink too much, go too fast, think they know everything, and they have an accident. You can't prevent stupid, no matter how hard we try. In our club, every meeting we open and close with, please be safe out on the roads, obey the speed limits. watch out for the idiots. If you see somebody screwing around on the road, stop them, talk to them nicely. And if they continue, report it to police officers. That's what their job is, and that's partly our job as riders. I also think that the time frame for operation is a little off, especially for the winter hours. An hour after sunset puts it pretty early in the evening. I think it should be set at just a standard time, like whatever, an hour before sunrise is fine, and make it till like 11 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, just a solid straight time. Because if you're out riding in a group and say our group has done it already, we've gone 130 miles. Well, by the time we get back, especially in fall, it's 4 o'clock. Well, we're almost to the point where we're not supposed to be out on the road anymore, and some of us still got 40 miles to go home yet. So I think that time limit needs to be adjusted. And also, I think we should do like all the other counties do, open our county roads, have them say that's all open unless otherwise posted. That way you close your high traffic areas, you close your dangerous intersection areas. Keep them open for a while to see where these exist, and you can always close a road. So that's, I guess, what I'm here again for today. So sooner or later, we'll get this organized, and hopefully for the better of everybody. It's a lot of economy that's out there that's going to waste for tourism. Thank you much.
Thank you, Judy. Did anybody else wish to provide public comment? All right. All right, if you want to approach the microphone, please.
My name is Carol Wesley. I'm from the Achieve Center at 520 North 28th Avenue, and I'd like to speak to the proposed 28th Avenue expansion. The Achieve Center provides assessment, treatment, and support to children and families with neurodevelopmental disorders, chronic health problems, and physical challenges. We have been in Wausau since 2007. We have occupied the property at 520 North 28th Avenue since 2014. We currently have a plan with, which has been developed to expand our building on the east side, which 520 North 28th Avenue is on the corner of Madonna and 28th Avenue. With the current plan for expanding the 28th Avenue, it becomes impossible for us to continue with our expansion project. The current plan calls for taking 40 feet of our property on two sides. So it would be 40 feet on Madonna and 40 feet on 28th Avenue. And that precludes any possible expansion that we have currently planned. This is really serious for us because we have architects and contractors already involved with plans to begin digging at the end of September of 2021 and opening our new program, which is a treatment-focused child care, and it's intensive treatment for children with a wide range of developmental disorders. It's a new concept. There is nothing like it in the state of Wisconsin. And we've put forth great effort to be able to not only develop this new program for children in the greater Wausau, Marathon County area, but also we have expended a lot of money in developing the plans and beginning the development of the property itself. So I would ask that the committee rethink the expansion of 28th Avenue because of the effects on us, but also it will increase traffic on 28th Avenue, which it goes through a mixed residential health services area. And there's a lot of pedestrian traffic now going across and among all of the medical campus buildings. There's also a school and a child care located on 28th Avenue in addition to us. And that's problematic. And so respectfully, I would like to request that sincerely you reconsider this possibility and to be able to develop other plans which would meet the better needs of Marathon County. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to close public comment and we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes of the July 1, 2021 Infrastructure Committee meeting. Minutes were provided in your packet. Is that a motion from Christensen? We got a motion to approve from Christensen. Do we have a second? We have a second from Seiler. Any further clarifications, questions on minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes for July 1st signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Say nay. Minutes are approved. We are on to item 4, policy issues, discussion, potential committee determination. 4A, review of right-of-way corridor along 28th Avenue, potential sale acquisition. Mr. Griesbach, take it away.
Thank you. This corridor map was developed in the around 2003 in that area, with the thoughts of the expansion around the area. Dave Mack, who actually couldn't be with us today, I spoke to him quite a bit yesterday about it. He was heavily involved in that thought process. I have received a call both from the Chief Center and another landowner on the north side that we've actually bought some right-of-way from. So in about 2003, we developed a corridor thinking that at some point the traffic is going to expand enough to where we want to have a western corridor around the west side of Wausau, kind of a circle around all of Wausau. Since that, a couple things have happened. One, the traffic has never developed, or the area has never developed quite the way the planning had thought it was going to develop in the early 2000s. Most of the development around Wausau has either been south or east of Wausau, the western Cronuit area. There really hasn't been much expansion through that area. Through the years, we've when the corridor map was first developed, and maybe I should back up to explain what the corridor map is. A corridor map is a map that is developed to help both planning and residents and businesses along the area for future planning. Not that you go build something and 5 years later, all of a sudden the highway department comes through, or the state of Wisconsin, or wherever the entity may be, and say, hey, we're going to build a road through here, and you just built this in this area that we need to build. So it's kind of a tool to help all parties involved. They're regularly used. There's actually a corridor map right now from Chippewa Falls to Green Bay along Highway 29, just letting people know that, hey, there's some thought process out here that we may develop this. So that was done again in the early 2000s. When that was first developed, we had a handful of landowners come to us right away and said, you know, if you're going to put a road through here at someday, I'm about ready to sell this parcel. Would you be willing to purchase it? We go through the proper channels, we get appraisals, we go through all the state requirements, and we purchase those parcels. Since 2003, after the map is developed, every few years I've had people come up to me, contact us, and both of you have been on the committee for a while, remembered a few of them. They've come to us and say, I'm about to sell my house, I'm about to sell this land. Would you like to purchase this at this time? Our practice up to now has been, sure, we might as well buy these pieces as we go along. So someday when this road gets built, we're ready to go. We don't have to buy the entire corridor map. So we've been purchasing those. One of the phone calls I got recently in the past month is from a landowner that wants to expand this shed around his house, and he wants to buy some of this right-of-way back. He said, if you don't build this road, do you need the right-of-way? I said, we probably don't, and he's interested in buying a strip of this back. Again, I talked to Dave Mack again yesterday and about the growth, and again, he mentioned we have not seen that growth over 20 years. The idea of creating the ring around the metro area development really isn't there to lack of growth to the area. Again, mainly to the east and the south is where it went. I guess the questions to you today is, do we want to continue to invest in the area around that really hasn't grown? And right now, according to Dave and planning and myself, We just don't feel that area needs to grow. The other things that happened since 2003 is the city of Wausau developed Westwood Drive parallel to this road, a quarter of a mile away. So we have US 51, a 4-lane facility. A couple hundred yards over, we have Westwood Drive, a 4-lane facility, and we need to develop 28th Avenue, less than a quarter of a mile away, into another 4-lane facility. So those are the questions ahead of you today is, do we want to invest in a highway that parallels both 51 and Westwood Drive? And then with that, what do we, if we decide to, we're not going to go ahead with it, we have a lot of parcels along that road that's already purchased that we could look at probably selling for some type of sale at, you know, fair market value. So what do we want to do with that? I've contacted 4 different people, and I think I finally found the right person yesterday at Department of Transportation of our next step. If we do want to vacate that corridor map, what is our steps? And he's going to look into it. He feels that we are going to have to do a public hearing and develop a corridor map saying, all right, this is the original map that we had developed. These are the parcels that we purchased and are no longer on there, and we would have to vacate that corridor map. So again, the question in front of the board here today is, do we want to continue the process we have been practicing? Again, we've been in contact the past month. I've had contact with the landowner and the chief center on what we should be doing with these parcels. That's been out there since 2005, I believe the plat was officially, or the corridor was officially recorded.
First thing is, do we have can we get a map up on the screen, or what, the area that we're, the corridor plan?
The right-of-way plat that I have, let me. Okay, could you share that one?
Grab the.
So I don't have the plat with me unless you really understand right-of-way plats. It's not gonna make a whole lot of sense to you, so let me just figure out where I'm at here. Down a little bit. So the area that we're talking about is, right here is the Wausau Hospital. And the project basically started by West Hill Drive and went north, okay? So we started here. If you travel north, when we got to what's referred to in the area as Big Steepy going up 28th Avenue, which is here, that road was too steep for us to put a road in without taking many homes out. So the plan was to sweep that road over to the west, come up where 30th used to be. So all these grayed out parcels along this piece, those are parcels we've already purchased, okay? Lay down a little bit. Then the road was to swing back through this area and go up 28th Avenue. And the part, and you'll see, if I can zoom in a little bit, you see like right here, this parcel, see how it's bumped out a little bit already right there? That means we bought that little strip of land. We continue north along 28th. You see this where it says project number 284-55, that is our plat. Again, this is Highway U. This parcel right here, that's all kind of more of a gray color. That means we bought that parcel already. The road was to continue at that point all the way up to Highway K. Again, this area right here, this is area that we purchased. the parcel that's called Cousins right here, this is one of the landowners that wants to expand their house garage and put it back into the strip of land. We're up to Cassidy. Again, here's another parcel that was purchased. And at this point, it was supposed to swing up into Merrill Ave and then come back into Highway K. So, again, some of that has been purchased already. I would say on the average, Kevin, you can help me out on this. I would say on the average, we're probably, Carol spoke about 40 foot. That's probably a little bit more than the average. I would say the average parcel, besides the full ones that we had to swing around where Old Steepy was, I would say on the average, we're probably affecting 20 feet on either side of the road, 20 to 30. Again, Carol's parcel down there, Achievement Center might have been a little bit more, but I would say on the average, we'd be affecting 20 to 25 feet to each person's parcel on either side of the road.
Is everybody on the committee kind of aware of what we're talking about now? All right. And I think we can have a preliminary discussion today. I don't think we'll have any final decisions on any of this. I think with what the MPO is doing in terms of the long-range transportation plan, some traffic modeling that's ongoing in that area right now, I think this is a timely discussion and we can look at it from a bigger picture, but it may be a multi-month discussion and a decision on where we want to go with that. At least I think there would be some good information that could come out. This is a good topic to discuss, and if we're not going to do anything with the road, let's not continue to acquire property and release what we have. So what's the thoughts of the committee members? Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim, do we have traffic counts on that portion of 28th Ave? Because I don't think it's going to be very high. I don't think there's a lot of folks.
We do have them. I don't have them with me
Right,
today,
no.
but I'm guessing that traffic right now for a 4-lane facility, we're thousands of cars away a day right now from getting a 4-lane facility to meet those needs.
Right, and just personal observation, living here for 30 years, I don't see, like you said, haven't seen the growth in that area. The real need for it, especially with County R, like you said, being developed by the city of Wausau.
Westwood Drive.
Westwood Drive, County R. I mean, County R turns into Westwood Drive, right? Pretty much.
This
No?
Westwood Drive, County R would
You're
turn
right.
into
You're right.
28th
You're right.
Avenue.
But that's 4-lane all the way to you, or does that go all the way to K?
Right north of the hospital, the 4-lane ends.
I'm talking about the Westwood Drive. Westwood Drive goes all the way through.
Westwood Drive is.
Right.
4-lane.
So we would be duplicating a corridor
Yes,
a half mile away, or so.
correct.
Maybe a little bit more. So my personal opinion is I don't think we need to, certainly we can stop acquiring property, put it on hold, and if property owners who have sold strips, like the one person you were talking about wants to buy it back, I don't see an impediment towards going that direction. So certainly stop, I believe we should stop acquiring any new properties, and we can always change plans down the road, but right now it doesn't seem feasible or necessary or needed. So that's my thoughts on it.
Supervisor Robinson?
I urge caution in abandoning the plan, and I'd like to just reiterate Randy's or the chairman's comments relative to let's let the planning process work. The reason you put corridors on plans is to plan for the future growth. You don't want to be adopting or modifying those plans once the growth has occurred, because it is much more expensive, as the city learned on Thomas Street. And so while there are factors that are intervening relative to the Westwood Drive development, we know that the county is interested in a parcel along this highway for potential highway facilities. There is development occurring. The Village of Maine is very aggressively trying to promote that area. So I think that there are factors that will significantly change traffic counts in the future. And the reason you put things on a map is to limit development, to communicate the potential for the road expansion in the future, and hopefully minimize the need for relocation. So let's develop a plan. If there are viable alternatives, we can then look at modifying the plan. But for the time being, until we have a plan in place that is approved by policymakers that include the Village of Maine and the City of Wausau and the town of Stettin, I think we ought to stay the course.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson?
I appreciate your comments. It's been 18 years since this started, and there's no development, there's no action really on this corridor. So, like I said, I appreciate the idea of waiting and all that. I think the major concern we have right now is this, the Achieve Center, and I forget your last name, is it Wesley? Okay. Coming in and speaking to us, and what she has plans on developing now, and how does that affect what this plan is and what we're supposed to do here today. I mean, can she move forward reasonably thinking that it's okay, it's gonna be okay, or is this something that's gonna turn around and we're gonna, stop her from doing in the future or take her land or whatever? I'm just asking the question because of that, so.
The idea with a corridor map, as I mentioned earlier, is to give both parties some planning tools. So if the Achieve Center would go ahead and build this, and in 3 years, something changes and we want to develop this, and also now we need to go buy that land back from the Achieve Center, you're going to be purchasing whatever they just expanded. There may be an opportunity that we could work with the engineer that they have on staff to say, all right, maybe if we build the Achieve Center puts a retaining wall into this process, that, we could probably, because we do have plans at 60%, that we have a somewhat idea how far the new slope is going to come back. That we could maybe work with the Chief Center and say, all right, here's what we can do, what do you propose, and how can we work together on that? But again, if the Chief Center builds something out there, they expand their building out there, in 5 years you want to go buy that property, you would be paying for that, whatever they just put on that addition. You could probably work something out, probably a question for Michael, if we could work something out to say that you've built in the corridor area and you were aware this was going to happen. We'd have to read through those statutes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 18 years, this plan, is that correct? The corridor plan has
I
been
believe
there?
it's 2005.
2005, okay, 16 years. Population has not grown. There are other factors that are in play. If we do end up purchasing the Witter Farm for the facility, we're going to have access from Westwood Drive, a 4-lane road. So I don't think we do need to adapt, and I don't want to see a stifling current business growth on projected growth that people thought was going to happen 16 years ago that hasn't materialized. So my initial thought is it seems foolish to continue blocking folks from using their properties as they would, on the chance that we might in the future see growth enough to justify a 4-lane road, which, as Mr. Griesbach said, just isn't there right now. It just isn't there. So I don't know. I'm inclined to put it on hold, and maybe it does need a little bit more study, but I don't think we should be limiting someone that currently owns a property based on a wishful projection that we're going to have growth that we haven't seen in 16 years. I just don't think it's realistic. So that's where I fall on it.
Mr. Lang, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to hit on, I believe the corridor mapping, when I read through that, it gets recorded. The landowners were notified through hearings, and the issue would be is if you would build a facility, you lose the right to get properly compensated compared to a fresh project that just comes in and impacts your facility. So I think that would be the significant discussion that should happen. And I think that's just how the wording is in the legal part of it that goes with that process of that corridor mapping. So it's recorded on all of those parcels that are impacted. There, it goes through the Register of Deeds, so it should come up on a title search. And I think that would be a significant thing that should be thoroughly vetted before you would look at any construction out there.
Do you know if the corridor plan, and is that similar to an official map in terms of the requirements on that? Okay, I think that's my understanding too. Supervisor Seiler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering how, ballpark, Jim, how many businesses are in that area that could potentially be impacted? And it looks like.
And that would take 50 feet, which would not only take our signage, but also our toddler playground is right out there. We have our emergency evacuation site across the street. So this is not a good idea for us at all, coming from that. And we're a 1968 nonprofit organization. So this would definitely negatively impact our childcare facility.
Okay, thank you for that.
As far as how many businesses are in that area, I'm not sure off the top of my head that would be affected, but I'm gonna go with the existing businesses, probably about 4 to 5, because once you start going up the hill, it's more residential.
Residential, okay. But it just seems from what I've heard today, a lot of good information, good comments. It does take, to our chair's point, a lot more study, I think, to really look at this overall and make a more informed decision with what we know. I'm sure there are other things that would be good to consider, so I would really welcome more information, a careful look at this before any decisions are made. Thank you.
Supervisor Robinson.
I think that's what the chair had advocated for and that I support. I think we want to be careful because corridors are hard to plan, they're hard to develop, they're costly to implement. And I think what we need to do is, if we still have things on the table, we need to make sure that people are aware that the plans may occur. And I think the city has changed some of the development patterns with the development of Westwood Drive, but you have County R extension all the way into the Village of Maine. I know the Village of Maine has some aspirations for that intersection, but they're not at the table today. We need those parties to get together to talk about a long-term planning process, because once it's developed, into that corridor, it is very, very, very expensive for us to implement that plan.
Supervisor Seiler.
Thank you, and I appreciate those comments, Supervisor Robinson. But my concern, even though this may not be a lot of businesses, from the 2 businesses that I've just heard from, we need this and more like that. And the last thing we want to do is negatively impact businesses like this or nonprofits. And so if for some reason, to your point, that this is needed, I think, again, a careful partnership with those existing businesses, and that there's always communication, and then how can we continue to be supportive of that growth, or just communication as we go forward, and for any current property owners, that if there is any plan, that they carefully communicate with the county before there's any investment. But for those that do exist, and I think these are crucial to the quality of life in our community, I wouldn't want to do anything to discourage that, but they are here now. So going forward, what does that mean? I don't have the answers. I just want us careful for us, careful for them, because we're all in this together. Thanks.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Yeah, last comment, last question too is, how many parcels have we purchased through that area? Do we have any idea what cost, and what then potential revenue would be by selling back or selling to others? I mean, because we have this land that we're just holding. Right. Is there opportunity there? You mentioned maybe some small parcels of land to attach to current property. Is there property just exists where you could sell to someone to build a house, therefore then it's tax revenue, or, you see where I'm going with that? If we rid ourselves of that area, is there a benefit for us financially?
Especially in the area of where we had swung off to the west, we bought a significant number of parcels. So I can't put a number on how many, because I know like one landowner up here had like 4 or 5 parcels. We bought them all together. So I can't put a number on how many we had, but if you look at the size of these parcels over here, I'm circling, just imagine that was the same thing on the other side of the road. So right here, you're probably looking at 4 parcels right here. There's 5 down here. I know we bought a significant number of parcels through here. So yes, there is a chance to be able to resell those if you would like. Again, the question today was, what should be our next step? I wasn't expecting an answer today from the committee, but if I need to start a process, I need to look into what should that process be. I'm not going to spend a whole amount of time looking into things that we're probably not interested in, or how to, and the other question is how to work together with the Chief Center on their development.
Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you. I think the central question is whether the rationale to create the corridor is still valid now. And that's what we need to determine. Because if it's not, there's no reason to maintain the corridor if the rationale no longer applies. So hopefully, John, you were around back then, right? You were around when they created the wheel. So just thinking. It would be great to have the historical reasons why that corridor was pursued. I think we have the gist of it, that there was projected growth, which has not come to pass. So I would want to look at whether our current situation warrants continuing that process and looking at the corridor. I think that's a central question here.
Correct. And again, that's one of the questions. Our 2050 plan, we're working with North Central Planning on the looking at if this corridor, that's part of that study again. Again, today I was more with the 2 phone calls I got. The parcel to the north, that person I believe can probably wait until we receive our 2050 plan, which we're meeting at 1 o'clock today with North Central Planning to see the status on that. But it sounds like the Chief Center is a little bit farther along with their plans and waiting for the answer from North Central Planning. And again, if I need to start looking into, again, I talked to Department of Transportation, what the next steps are. They're looking into it, but again, it took me 4 people at the DOT to figure out the next steps, and so they're actually having some of their legal folks look at it also.
All right, I think to wrap up this discussion at this point, Supervisor Christensen, go ahead.
I have to agree with Supervisor Johnson. I think we need to look a little farther west. We've got too many major corridors in this one small area here. Probably look at the County Highway O as a major corridor instead of this one here going mostly all residential area here. But that's all I got to say on that. But if we haven't done anything yet, I think it's time to abandon it. Thank you.
All right, I think in order to wrap this up, I think we need to have further discussions at a future meeting. Getting some ideas. There was ideas about traffic counts, modeling projections. If we can have Mr. Mack at a meeting once some of that more information is available, I think it would be good to actually see the corridor plan that was put together, along with what right-of-way we actually have within these maps. And I don't think we need to get down into the analysis of how much we paid for each of these parcels, but just a general idea of what's out there that we can talk about and what that process would be. Yep. Supervisor Robinson?
And I think we need to involve the local units of government that are on that corridor, the city, the village, and the town.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how we want to do that, and I'll leave that up to staff, how you want, if you want to invite them to a meeting, if you want to meet with them. I think that input would be well thought out as well.
Just one final point. We do have a planning process, and this is being evaluated. And I would caution us to separate it out from that overall process, because what happens with one component affects other components, and that should be done relatively soon. I would encourage us to wait for that planning process at the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We have a Metropolitan Planning Organization of all the communities from the Village of Maine down through Mosinee that are engaged in trying to look at issues affecting the corridor, including Marathon County has a seat. I represent the county. Randy fills in for the Village of Cronewater, but it is there to plan for these purposes. Let that process work. This has been identified as a potential area for revision, but we need to let that process work, and it is under consideration right now.
We're going to go Supervisor Johnson, then Gums, and we're going to move on to the next item.
No, he kind of answered the question, who our representative is on that committee. And, I just think that committee needs to look at the very realistic possibility that that corridor is not going to be available because it may not make sense to continue it. So I don't think they should be moving ahead planning on it being there either at this point, based on the past 16 years of non-growth. So I just want everybody to be realistic, but they need to understand that this committee will make the decision whether or not independent of their input, with their input, but they need to understand that it's a very real possibility that that corridor should not be a linchpin at this point of any of the plans moving forward, because that would be incredibly foolish, in my opinion. It would be a lot of wasted time and resource. And I do like Supervisor Christensen's idea, County Highway O, non-residential, much easier to develop. You might want to bring that to that consortium, to that group. So, thank you.
Supervisor Gums?
Yeah, once in a while we got to admit that we do swing and miss too. The other thing I wanted to say is, who's on North Central Planning anymore? Do we have anybody on that commission?
Administrator Leonard, do you have that answer?
I can pull it up. I believe Vice Chair McEwen is on that organization as behalf of Marathon County. That's my recollection.
That sounds familiar to me too. All right.
Is Guild still on it or no?
I believe so from the last
Why?
newsletter I got.
Why?
That's a discussion for another time.
I believe the governor makes those appointments.
Yeah. I believe you're correct on that, absolutely. All right, we are going to move on to item 4B, use of ATV, UTV on county highway system. Commissioner Griesbach, you want to lead us off here?
Sure. I sent you a lot of information early on for you to review. Just a couple items to follow up from our last month's meeting when Lieutenant Ted Kinnick was in, and he had given you the map of how many accidents were in Marathon County, and the question was, well, how many of those are in the metro area? He pulled the metro area out, and there's still 1,028 accidents in Marathon County without the metro area that the Sheriff's Department responded to. I had a conversation with Sheriff Scott Parks yesterday. He could not be here. He had some other engagements. The three bullets he just wanted me to point out is the Sheriff's Department is busy enough, and I think everybody's probably willing to admit that they'll probably have some more calls to go on because of UTV, ATVs, whether it be people not behaving on them, an accident, something's going to happen at some point that they have enough accidents to go on. He said he felt that we're doing a very good job at this point of opening up sections, when people are asking. I just had another one that we approved. I didn't put it in my report because I was waiting for the results of today's meeting before we open up a small section and do something different here. And he had also mentioned that to tell the committee that he still opposes of opening up all the roads. He believes we should continue on opening up small sections. Again, it's going to be just a continuation of last month's meeting. I'm here to answer any questions, but one question did come up in meantime since the last month. I know last month the comment was made at this group when we were talking about opening up a speed limit in the town of Rib Falls, that a lot of the townships kind of know what their constituents want. My question for the committee that was brought up was if the committee would decide, okay, we are opening up all the roads or a certain sections of roads that have less than a certain amount of traffic volume, what do we do with the townships? And I'll just throw a few names out there of Bergen, all on the west side, because I'm familiar with the west side, Judy's at the east side. Brighton, Rib Falls, Marathon, Bergen, that do not have their roads open. And now you're gonna say, okay, I'll use Brighton for example. Highway F, we want to open up Highway F because the traffic volume is low on that road, and the township does not have their roads open. What does that do to the township in that area? So is this something that probably needs to be addressed before we make any blanket statements of what we're going to open and what we're not going to open? Again, I sent you information that you requested last month that included, how do we bring this up? Share.
Scroll down. Jim, I have the packet up if there's someplace you want me to go.
No, we got it as a PDF. We brought it up as a PDF because it's a little easier.
Okay, if you tell me if you want me to be on a certain page.
So we did have a survey done. This was done of June of all the other counties that have roads open. That was included in the packet. Thank you, Lance. We included the roads that are open in different counties. Not all counties responded, but you see there's a good majority of counties that are open. And then we also talked about issues that those counties have seen. And if you have any questions regarding any of these, you can ask at any time. There was a lot of information. Barron County did that survey this past summer. There's a lot of information there.
I guess I just want to thank staff for putting together the pack materials. There's a lot of information in here. It was interesting, to say the least, to go through and look at. Let's start the discussion at the committee level. Who would like to start? Supervisor Dickinson.
So the first thing I'll say is just to respond to Commissioner Griesbach is, I mean, what do we do now when we have, you know, state, county, and local kind of control? I would say that if a local township did not want ATV, UTV in their area, I don't see where we could, you know, kind of come down upon them and say, well, no, we're going to open up these roads regardless of what you say. So however that needs to be legally recommended, if a township doesn't want it, I don't think that we should be forcing it upon them in that area. That would be up to the citizens in that local area to go ahead and make that decision and move forward with their board. So I would just make that comment. Looking at the surveys, you know, I did go through that. There were 46 counties that responded. 39 of them have yes to ATV, UTV on their road in some fashion. Approximately 32 select sections, and 7 were basically all. There were 6 that don't. Why would they have that? The reasons, you know, tourism, travel, connectivity, statutes, you know, these kinds of things, following the law from another level. Why do they say no? Basically, it's all safety. Road surfaces, volumes of traffic, sight lines, narrow roads, trucks, that sort of thing. When then we look at some of the accident data, so you supplied us with the fatalities going back to 2016. So basically you're getting from 2016, you know, somewhere in the area of 20 to 38, it looks like, so probably around 25 fatalities a year in the state of Wisconsin, pretty much about 1 per county. If you look at that, if you break that down, Marathon County has seen, it looks like 4 over the past 6 years. What are the reasons for those deaths, it was kind of mentioned before, there generally are on public roads, probably 2/3 of the time, but they're collision with a fixed object and a rollover, with alcohol being a factor in probably half to 2/3 of those cases. So it's exactly what was stated here. You have someone who's driving for whatever reason, probably too fast, trying to make a turn, and hitting the gravel and the road, and the tires are going to rotate at a different speed, and they go into the ditch, and they cause that accident. As far as collisions with other vehicles for accidents, there are a total of 11 out of all of those deaths, and some of those were with other ATV and UTV. I believe there were 2 or 3 that were an actual other vehicle. So kind of the thought that there's going to be a truck driving down the road and someone's going to get hit by a truck or hit by a car just isn't happening in our state. I understand it's a possibility, but it's not happening as far as the fatalities. So there's very few per county, regardless. So just reviewing that data. Generally, my thought is, and I appreciate all of the people who have come in and spoken to us and given public comment over the months. I appreciate the clubs who've gotten the signatures. It's quite a few people who are looking to expand the roads. I do think it will help with tourism. I do think it will help because people are avoiding, our county. They are going to other places, and there's lots of opportunity here. As far as the crash data, there's 2,400 crashes, and then, we hear that there's 1,000 outside of the municipality area here in the Wausau area, but still most of those still occur on state and federal highways, which we don't have any jurisdiction over anyway. County road crashes and that sort of thing and local road crashes are a lot less. So I just wanted to make those comments, and then I'll leave it up to other people to comment from here.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The main theme that I took when I looked at why the various counties have approved what they have approved, connectivity seems to be the big issue. I'm not an ATV, UTV rider, but it sounds like, and almost every time folks come to speak, connectivity seems to be the issue. So you can have continuous rides. So I think there is a middle ground to be found, perhaps, with the connectivity. It still has to take into account, whatever we decide has to take into account, the traffic counts. And, because if it's an insanely busy county road, safety is going to be the #1 priority. And I agree with that. However, if there's a safe way to connect these between town roads, and I think that's kind of the system we have set up, but if there's a way to improve it, to improve connectivity, I personally wouldn't have a problem with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question for Mr. Griesbach. Can you give everybody a little information just on the existing process that we have now in terms of how a request would come in, kind of what your office does, and what are some possible reasons that something would be denied?
The current process we have now is we receive applications either from a club or a municipality to open up a small section road for connectivity, or we've tried one experimenting to a destination. So what it comes in is we review those, and we take into account the traffic volumes, the amount of truck traffic, speed limit, how many homes are close to the roadway within was it, Kevin, 150 feet, I believe, of the center line? And we also look at, are they crossing a narrow causeway? Is that causeway more than 25 feet or less than 25 feet? Everything has assigned a point to it. So after we go through all those statistics, the width of the roadways, the last one I believe I missed. After we go through all of those, we score it. If it scores greater than 100, the application is denied. Even if it's denied, at that point, I send it to the Sheriff's Department and the Parks Department for their review. If If it's approved by myself, again, I send it to the Sheriff's Department and the Parks Department for approval. The Sheriff's Department approval is more for, are you familiar with any other accidents or any other history in that area that we should know about? I send it to the Parks Department for evaluation is there another alternative? Instead of using a road, is there a route or a trail going through someplace that I don't know about that they could connect point A to point B without going on the highway? So that's our current process. There is a $100 non-refundable application fee for this. And then once approved, it is up at this point to the applicant to pay. We put up the signage, and it is up to the applicant to pay for, we bill the applicant for that signage. Again, as I mentioned last month, the signage has gone through the roof. Believe it's about $195 right now just for the post and the two signs that go up. The route marker and the arrow left or right, straight ahead are closed, so we have about $195 into each post. So if I was to open a half-mile segment, there's 4 posts that need to go up, begin and each north or south or east-west, each direction, plus insulation. So we're probably looking for a half-mile segment. Time my sign person goes out there, locates it the first time for Digger's Hotline, goes back the second time and installs the signs. We're probably looking at, for those 4 signs, we're talking $800 just for the signs and then plus insulation. So we're probably talking close to $2,000 at this point to put up those 4 signs. And just to quick circle back to a comment for Supervisor Dickinson, when I talked about the going into a township, I wasn't talking about opening up their town roads. I was talking about if a county road goes through a township that's closed, would we open up that county road? Again, that jurisdiction on that county road would be the counties and not the townships. So would you open it up on a county road through a township that's not open for their residents?
Supervisor Dickinson.
And the way I would look at that is we would honor their judgment for their local community. I don't think that would be a problem for us to say, if that's what you want in Brighton, then we will allow those county roads to be closed, and then it can be reviewed at some point. That would be one way I would look at that. I do want to make a comment about the signage. I mean, there's one way to look at this, and that is if you open up the entire county, the only signage you need is where you don't have to go. So your signage cost will go down. You don't have to post everywhere as long as it's within statute, if that's the way it can be posted. So there's another way to look at that besides we got to post a sign everywhere around the entire county or where that, if it's okay. And I believe I drove down to Adams Friendship, we were down there last weekend, and they actually said no TV on this road. So they had that down there.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about the requirements? If we were to open up, wouldn't we have to post each road that as you enter the county?
I believe how the law reads is we could put it when we come, each road coming into the county, we can say all county roads are open, otherwise posted, and then, correct, we'd have to start going on, let me guess, we don't want to open Highway R in Rim Mountain. So we'd have to put road closed on either end of that to ATV. So we'd have to start looking at those. Even those, I believe, would be somewhat significant, not as many as the other one, but we still have a lot of sections of those roads. And then, again, going into the townships, that if you would do it, as you had mentioned, the townships, we'd have to put signs up going either township that it's not open.
Supervisor Christensen. Somebody get this guy a working mic.
There we go. Thank you. Yes, I would like to propose that we open up all county roads and mark them as otherwise specified. In reference to Mr. Supervisor Dickinson, I would say that county roads could be open in those closed townships. It just makes everything so much easier. It makes a good continuity from one township to another. If there's a township in between the people who can't go on the town roads, they can get to another township. But I would make a motion that we open all county roads unless they're unless otherwise posted. Thank you.
All right, there's been a motion made. Is that a second from Gums? All right, we have a motion by Christensen, a second by Gums. We'll continue the discussion. Let's go Supervisor Seiler, and then we'll go.
Just let, oh, it's red.
Okay, okay, the battery must be
Yeah, we're-
there. Not yours is, hello? It's red too. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So a lot of great information here, and one of the things I was just curious about, and we've got our Corp Counsel here, and there's a note from Langlade County saying, Langlade County Corp Counsel stated concerns with opening up all roads and doing so may affect coverage under Wisconsin's recreational immunity statute. What do we know about that?
I don't know much about that, but I do know a bit about the recreational immunity statutes. I don't know that there's any specific interplay between opening up the roads and an effect on county liability. I think the county's liability and the recreational immunity would remain the same whether or not we've opened the county roads. So I'm not sure where that comment comes from, but I haven't spoken to the Corp Counsel over there to see what exactly the concern or objection is.
And I just want to note right now with the way the motion's been worded that we would be opening up all county roads, so that would mean all county roads. Commissioner Griesbach, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the motion, I believe, was open all county roads unless otherwise posted. I need to know what otherwise posted is.
Yeah, I think if we were to go, I mean, the way I'm understanding the motion right now would be opening everything up. We'd have to come back for a future discussion, talk about what would be not posted. I think that's probably a little bit premature at this point, but we'll continue discussion. Administrator Leonard?
Question.
Thank you, and I'll be very brief, and I certainly, from the staff perspective, I want to make sure you have the information you need to make the policy decision you're seeking to make. The consensus, or at least significant consensus I hear, is that there's a desire for us to modify, in essence, open more county roads or segments of county roads. That's the intent I get, that I hear, to Commissioner Griesbach's point and Chair Pfiffer's point. If we're gonna open all county roads unless otherwise posted, there's still an operational decision that staff need to make, and really, we haven't gotten additional guidance on what's going to help us make that decision. So I'll tell you how, from my perspective, how this would work. We just put signs up everywhere where right now we have signs where that says these sections are open. We would switch them to say every other section's closed because they would fail our criteria, and we haven't changed the criteria to guide staff's exercise of discretion. So what I would ask of the committee is help us help you. If there's a desire to open more roads, help us exercise our discretion more in line with your policy directive, which is, what I'm hearing is some additional focus on connectivity. Perhaps we can go through the criteria and tell you, like Jim said, this is how we're scoring it. If we change our scoring criteria, perhaps more roads open up. But from an operational standpoint right now, we're all adapting to what you're saying in the moment you're saying it. But my thought process is if the motion were to pass today, everything's open unless otherwise signed. Our process for how we determine whether something's open hasn't changed, and we would just close everything that still is closed, which isn't helpful to you. I understand you want something else, and right now, the tools we have are gonna give you the same thing. It's just the opposite in how it's gonna look, and that you're not gonna be satisfied, and I want you to be satisfied. So help us help you in terms of what do the criteria look like to open more roads in the manner that you want. I just want to be very upfront so that everyone understands what would happen. That's what I believe would happen. So if we're missing the mark, and it sounds as though we are, with the criteria we have, that you have reviewed, I believe that was a year and a half ago or so, December of 19, help us understand where we're missing the mark. We'll modify the criteria, we'll make sure we're closer, and we'll refine it over time. That's just, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's an issue in terms of, I don't think we just want to be picking and saying, well, this road in Red Mountain is closed, this road in Wausau is closed. I think we need to have some criteria for why we're making those decisions. I think that's part of the discussion that needs to continue to flow out of this. Supervisor Seiler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, initially when this first came to us, and I've been really trying to listen because I'm not a writer, so I don't have those experiences. And as someone who was trying to raise 3 sons on a family farm, safety was always something that was a big thing for me. So I've been listening and listening, and I have to say that my district has been really reaching out. There's a lot of interest to have more roads open, and I respect that, and I want to represent my district well, as well as the entire county. Reviewing everything that we've been given from the other counties, it just seems there's so much out there. Everyone is struggling, trying to do, just as you said, Administrator Leonard, and thank you for those comments, of trying to do something that's going to be more palatable for everyone. So, my request to the supervisors who, want to open it all up right now, I am afraid if we would do that without a little further thought, we're going to run into some issues. And so what I would like to see is, some of the comments from Wood County, they're talking about working with other departments, and I know staff already has done some of that, but to develop this overall plan of trails and routes. And the other thing that to me would be valuable, we have our neighboring counties who all have different approaches. I feel that not just within our county, which is a big enough lift, but there should be conversations with our neighboring counties, because if riders are going to be here, then all of a sudden, for not just the towns, but they're going to want to go into our neighboring counties. So that's another conversation, and rather than piecemeal this, with all due respect to the supervisors who have made the motion today, I respect that, and I know a lot of my residents want that, but to your point, Administrator Leonard, I don't think that right now we've got all the pieces to have a really good product. And so I'm in favor of doing more for a lot of the reasons that we're here. But in order to do it well, I do think we need a little bit more conversations. So I would really struggle to support opening all of it today, because I don't think it's like, okay, we want to make a cake. Well, you got the batter ready and in the pan, but the oven's not on. So, if we're going to bake a cake, you got to follow through. That's just my perspective. Thank you.
Supervisor Christensen, then Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to withdraw my motion. I would like to change that to all roads that are less than 1,000 vehicles a day. And we're looking at the map here, and that would open up quite a few of the county roads. And I think we could live with that pretty easily on that. And also, I would like to, I don't know if this is for Corp Council or for the administrator, is there a possibility that we can put a charge on each vehicle or ATV a registration of like $5 per every, I think we re-register for 2 years now, for every 2 years or something for people in Marathon County. Is that possible? I do not know.
I spoke to the department, the DNR about that. They do not believe that it is, because the money that you pay for your license right now goes into one pot, and that's split up for patrol, trails, and grants. So they cannot separate out each county like we do for the registration fee.
Because I know they do that for snowmobiles and stuff for using trails, and I don't know if they would allow something like that. But I would is that possible to change that motion to withdraw the original?
Are you
motion?
withdrawing your motion?
Yes. And change that to 1,000 vehicles or less per day.
So we'll note that the person making the motion has withdrawn that motion, so there's no motion on the table at this time. Do you wish to make a new motion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we open up county roads that are less than 1,000 vehicles per day.
Do we have a second to that motion? second by Gums. We'll continue the discussion with the new motion. Griesbach.
Just for your information, as Administrator Leonard talked about the process that we have, you do see the application. This is their scoring criteria that is on the screen right now for you to view. Again, it's commercial truck traffic, sight distance, highest posted speed, the road bed, the causeways that I spoke about, the average daily traffic, length of route. That would be something that would have to be reviewed because you're starting talking longer sections, that would put that over the top. And then the other factors, again, with the residents within 150 feet. And then with the other deductions we take a look at is there a gravel pit in that area that sees a high significance of trucks? Is there a school in that area? Quarries, large CAFO farms. So we take a look at those if those are in the area also.
I guess one of the questions that I have with the proposal is, I think based on the discussions we've had earlier about the cost of signage, this would be a significant amount of additional signage going in. How is that going to be paid for? What do we have in our budget to pay for this additional signage, or frankly, the time to install it?
Right now, we have nothing in our budget to pay for it, and I have one sign person that puts up signs on the county roads on 630 miles, and he is also in charge of setting up all of our construction work zones, and he's quite busy man without putting this on him, so we would have to take a look at how we would fund it, if it's going to be a shared cost, if we're going to have a bake sale, or how we're going to come up with the money for this. And then, again, the timing of it. I would hopefully the community would be able to realize if we do need to have signing done and something is done, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a process.
All right, Supervisor Dickinson.
Mine works.
We also need to budget for batteries for microphones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to make the comment that, I wonder what other counties, did they come knocking on our door asking us what we wanted when they decided to do this? I don't think they did. I think, in all due respect, this is the decision we need to make for our county, for our citizens. They've given us a tremendous amount of information, but having conversations with other counties like that, I think there's a point where government just starts growing and growing and growing, and we start kind of getting away from the core of what we're trying to do. And I think, and again, respectfully, we start talking about the cost of signage and how many meetings we're going to have to decide this, and who's going to be affected in this one little area over here. The core issue is whether we want to open up our roads to the residents in our county who aren't in these urban areas to be able to move about and have connectivity throughout the county. That's the core issue, and I believe we should. I believe we should do it all, because I think it's the most simplistic way to do it. Now, we can have criteria. I'm all for certain criteria to say that hill, that curve, that super long stretch. I get that, but that has to be a minimum so that people can consistently follow the law without trying to look everywhere to see, is there a sign for me to go left, right? Do I need to slow down? Do I need to, pull off into a ditch so that I don't break the law or something? I think we have to be simplistic in applying it. I appreciate the effort to say, less than 1,000 ADT because we want to avoid certain roads that are traveled. I do think the data suggests that people are not getting into accidents with other vehicles on traveled roads. So where I go with that is I say open up the roads, make it simple. You want to work with the communities in those areas to identify maybe high-risk areas. That sounds great. We have a criteria that we want to try to apply. That sounds great. I'm not saying that today, tomorrow, once we make this decision, boom, okay, we just open it all up, just everybody, woo, get on your ATV and just, have a big parade throughout the county. It doesn't mean it has to be today, in my opinion. It could be next month or the month after. But I do think we have to have the mentality to move forward to allow people to simply move about. They have the expression, move about the country for one of the airlines. Well, move about the county. I think that's so important. So I would be supportive of the resolution, of the movement, the motion to be, under 1,000. I would certainly prefer it be all roads. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I'll hold it at this time.
Thank you. Supervisor Robinson.
So from an implementation perspective, we have W, which on Marshall Hill is below 1,000. How do we, in the rest of it, it seems to be above. WW seems to have intermittent 1,000 average vehicles per day, but it's above and below. It looks like N, A number of other roads. Is the entire road open? Is the entire road closed? How are we monitoring that? I was surprised when we got the information, the number of ATVs and UTVs in the county, and I think that begs for us to reevaluate it. But I think we need a little bit better criteria in which we make the decision, because otherwise we'll be sitting out there with traffic counters and saying, well, this week you're at 1,001 vehicles, therefore you're closed, and next week you're at 980. Are you open? What are your criteria? How are you trying to move them? Supervisor Dickinson indicated that 32 counties put restrictions on the use of those that responded. We've got the criteria. My suggestion is drill down on the criteria and see which of them make sense going forward. But obviously, traffic volume gets into potential conflicts and safety issues. You've got safety issues relative to division, hills, curves, construction that may come in, and you've got local wishes, all of which have some sort of merit in the evaluation process. So is it possible for us to look at, as Administrator Leonard said, revisiting the criteria that would result in more roads being open without creating the administrative nightmare of sections of roads, the same road being open or closed because of the average daily volume?
And I think you bring up a number of good points, in that, this is a very complicated issue, and I appreciate all the good conversation. And frankly, I agree with both sides on this. I'm sure, like everybody else, I received a number of emails, comments, phone calls about this, and there's valid points on both sides of it. I don't know that we're going to come to a conclusion today that we're going to have, that we're going to be able to finalize this, but I think the input that we have is good, that can be incorporated into our policy. It sounds like, in looking at the data, it definitely suggests that there needs to be some changes to this. So I think the conversation is good, and we can give that direction to staff to bring back what our revised resolution or ordinance would look like. Supervisor Seiler, then Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to really thank those who spoke today, and I was very pleased to hear about the groups that are doing the education and self-policing, because we definitely need that. And so I would hope there'd be, as I was reading through some of the information offered by other counties, some of the groups would be paying for the signs and doing that sort of thing. So I'm sure from what I've heard that some of the local ones would be doing that, and I would hope that there's going to be more people, more groups that would form around this. Reminds me of the snowmobile club days when they first started. When it comes to the safety issue, I certainly see in having everything open that the idea of not having to look for a different sign every time you go from one community to another. I mean, the confusion for a rider, for a motorist, whoever, the more signs, the more confusion, the less, it just becomes very dangerous. So I see the importance of consistent signage and something simplistic, as Supervisor Dickinson said, to make it safer. But then again, I'm a little confused from everything I've heard. So can you tell me, explain for me so I clearly understand? We've got criteria, and let's say that we were to open everything up. Can we still then apply criteria to those areas, or do we have to? I don't quite understand that. How does the criteria we currently have that's used to do a section, where does that apply, or how is that used if we say we open everything up today, a month from now, whatever? I don't understand that.
If you would look at the criteria, we could still use the criteria, but we'd have to break some roads down into segments, okay? Because as has been pointed out, the traffic volume on Highway N is not the same in Colby as it is in Wausau. So we'd have to break down, we'd have to start looking at what segments we'd break it down into. Then we'd also have to start taking a look at how long are those segments, because as we use our current criteria, anything over 2 miles gets 40 points, okay, according to our criteria. So if we have also on a road that's over a section that's going to be over 2 miles and it's 55 miles an hour, we're already at 50 points, and that's not considering in much of anything else. So we'd probably have to take a look at revising the criteria that we look at. Again, we could use a lot of them, but we'd have to break those roads down into segments.
Supervisor Dickinson.
So in that criteria, right? So how many segments are approved and how many are denied? Do we have some?
Currently, I believe with I reported last meeting, I believe right now I have one sitting on my desk all ready to be approved. I was waiting for today's meeting to get over. I believe that would give me 22 segments open. And we have denied, I believe to this point, probably only 3. We just, there was one out on Highway Z. We just recently denied. That was our latest one. We've denied Highway M out of Athens. That was a while back. And trying to think of another one that we have. But what we give right now, instead of people investing their $100, I give them the criteria up front, so they kind of know if they're going to pass or not. They ask me what the traffic volume is. I give them the traffic volume, so they know up front if it pays for them to apply or not.
And how
Supervisor
long?
Gumbs,
Oh,
sorry.
just if I can just follow up, how long does that process take? Because it seems like, kind of asking a lot of people just to get a small segment of road. They have to request, and is this a month process? Is it a 2-month or what?
No, the process itself, depending if myself, Ted, and Jamie are all in the office, the last one probably took less than a week.
Supervisor Gumbs and Administrator Leonard.
Some of this is kind of laughable because when I came to the meeting today, there was 2 scooters waiting at the stoplights, those little 90cc things, and trying to protect everybody from everything. CAFOs, when them guys go out making silage hauling, corn silage hauling, they're all over the place. You can't say just by that farm. One day they're here, next 15 minutes later they're somewhere else. Same thing with granite. If they're hauling granite in that township that day, and there's 150 loads coming through. I think the ATV and UTV people will figure it out and not go where it's busy. I give them a little more credit. They will figure out where to go to get where they want to go. And they don't want to come downtown Wausau. I think that's another thing, but I think we try and make this too difficult.
Administrator Leonard.
Just to further answer Supervisor Dickinson's question about process, Commissioner Griesbach talked about the new process for considering those applications. For those of you that have been on the committee for a while, this is probably a feeling of a lot of deja vu. When I first came into administration, all requests would come to the committee, and you would consider this segment application, and maybe it would get denied 1 month. They would tweak the application and come back. 2 months later, you'd deny it, come back a third time, maybe you'd approve it. The whole reason we went toward this process, and I fully hear you, it's missing the mark, we need to tweak it, of criteria was to have the body set the policy in terms of opening segments based on safety and other factors, but staff apply it. And again, I want to make sure that if you set the policy, you tell us what service you want us to provide, to whom, and at what cost, and we figure it out. And we apply, I should say, that the operational criteria to affect your policy. My suggestion, if should you wish to have it, is we can walk you through an application and truly tell you how it works, and you guys can tell us, hey, we want less waiting on average daily load of traffic, length of segment. I hear one of the things you're talking about is perhaps length of segment. We're giving it too much weight in the formula, and we can tweak that. But I just want to give that historical context. When I came into administration, I attended these meetings, and this was before the body. Every month was this application, that application. I think our current process is much faster, but to Jim's point, if we're approving 22, denying 3, I'm sure there are more people that would apply, but they see the writing on the wall and don't. So if we need to change those criteria, we can. That said, you could, in your policy discretion, open all roads, all county roads. But if there's an exercise of discretion inherent in your motion, I think it behooves us, for you to get what you want, for us to know how you want us to exercise the discretion.
Supervisor Robinson.
Administrator Leonard beat me to the punch. The fundamental policy issue that we applied when we developed the initial ordinances was one of making the county trunk system available for connectivity, not for creating a route. What we're hearing is that there's a desire for it to become a potential route versus the connector. So with that in mind, I would direct administration to develop a revised policy for us that would look at the concept of routes and with specific direction that they look at the issue of traffic volume and looking at that 1,000 vehicles per day and lowering the scoring on that, as well as length of the route. But then we continue to look at the issues of safety in there, and then bring that back at a future meeting. But changing the focus from connectivity to developing the routes, which I'm hearing is a desire of others, and then look at how we would score it, and then we would have the criteria that they could apply, and then we could be looking at those sections of one highway that has multiple traffic counts and have a rational reason for deciding what segments are covered or open and what are not.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point. It was on one of the things that was brought up to me as part of a conversation with somebody in the county. I don't even remember who it was at this point, but it was a conversation about the continual target that seems to be moving on this, where it started as a small connector item. Now we want to use them for roadways. One of the conversations came up is, and maybe this is a question for Judy, since you represent a number of the clubs, but what are the clubs doing in terms of creating that connectivity? The snowmobiles obviously have their route system that relies on a lot of private property. There's been a lot of work done by different bicycle groups on off-road to establish trails in those areas. But could you maybe speak to what the clubs are doing in terms of creating that off-road ATV, UTV?
Yeah, I can tell you what we do. Basically, in Marathon County, we aren't going to have a trail system like up north where you can run through the woods and have a great time. We have to be able to, if you want to ride that kind of route, you have to be able to get there. And right now, with the county roads being as they are, with only small sections, our trip to go up north takes 170 miles where it should only be maybe 60 miles to go. I mean, it's an all-day excursion just to get somewhere where you want to trail ride. Marathon County is kind of a unique system because we can't have trails. We have 2 little short ones in Burma, and I think, Fenwood also has one. And otherwise, we're stuck on roads. It's great that the townships that we have, and the greatest majority of our townships have opened our roadways, but there's so many county roads that go through them that we can't get to because of the county, the way the town road system is. If we can have some of these county roads open without having to go through that criteria, it would make our enjoyment of the sport much easier. It would make our ability to promote tourism, to go to stores, to go to restaurants, to go to the gas stations and spend our money. I mean, we're registered vehicles, we pay gas tax, we pay, tire tax if we have to replace our tires. We are promoting this to the community. We as clubs tell everybody, yes, it's a privilege if we get to use this roadway. If there's a lot of traffic building up behind you, by all means, slow down, move over, let the traffic go. We're out here at 35 miles an hour. That's our top speed. We don't care what the highway traffic is. It can be 75. We still go 35. If we see a buildup behind us, common sense tells you move over and let that go. That's just like farm use. If they see people behind them built up, they're going to try to move over the best they can.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted that one question answered, so thank you. Administrator Leonard.
I'm going to offer something to you, and please tell me if we're off base, but what Jim and I are hearing, let me reflect back and see if this would be helpful to you. Right now, our process is driven by an application, and then our application of criteria to that application. Perhaps the committee would appreciate if administration, Commissioner Griesbach and his staff perhaps engaged with towns and some of the ATV clubs to essentially take all the segments in Marathon County and have a map. These are all open, not require someone to apply. These are not open. Taking into Supervisor Dickinson's point, if going through a township, there's a segment of county highway, the township has not opened township roads, so the county road segment within the township would remain closed based on that the idea of local control. Rather than being reactive, perhaps we could be proactive. Just a suggestion if the committee would find that valuable.
Supervisor Johnson, then Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you. You beat me to the punch there, because what I was thinking is that the issue, to me, seems to be connectivity and the ability to have a good quality ride when you go out without having to jump all over the place. And the people are going to have that information are the clubs and the towns. And you're going to know what segments they need open, right? So, and I do like the idea of doing away with the application-based process and moving towards looking at developing that county-wide map where everybody's got the same map. You know what segments are good. You know what segments of county road you need for that connectivity between your town roads. And we get it done. We have it printed and we're done with it. And we don't have to have individual groups coming back saying, oh, we need, a mile here or a half mile there, because it would be a comprehensive system. And I think it would be a way to, and there are going to be segments that townships are going to want that are going to get a no because of safety issues. And I can understand that that's going to be the number one consideration is safety. Like you said, I don't want ATVs, UTVs going up Marshall Hill where there's a drop off on one side and rock on the other. And it's just not a good place for UTVs. It's not safe. What? Yeah, I know, but I might run into them if it's wintertime when I'm sliding across a couple lanes. It's just not it's not the best place for it to be. But I do like that idea of developing those segments that are needed, and it would need the town's involvement, because if the town doesn't want it, that's not going to happen. I agree with that, the local control there. I agree if they do want it, they can bring those proposals forward, what segment they need. And look, please, let's emphasize to the townships, it's what do you need, not what all do you want. Because the question or answer sometimes is going to be, we want everything. It's like, no, what do you need to do the connectivity to make sense? To make it usable, to make it more user-friendly, so we have more folks using it. And I think to facilitate that, I move that we table the motion on the floor until next month's meeting, so we have a little bit more information. Because I think it'd be premature to take action right now when I think we're getting towards a solution that might work for a lot of folks. So my motion is to table till next month.
We have a motion to table from Johnson. Looks like a second from Robinson. Mr. Griesbach.
Just to let you know, if you're thinking I have a map or something by next month, I'm in the middle of my bridge program, and it probably will be at the earliest October, if not November, before I'll be able to get you some type of map. Unless you're just looking for some criteria, I can get that, but to sit down, right now, I'm in the middle of my bridge program.
Supervisor Johnson.
Yeah, the intent is not for you to have something ready to go, Jim. But we can have that, we can look at the criteria more closely, and let's be prepared to do that, so we can try to ensure that the ATV use is going to get what they need while still maintaining safety. I mean, the length of connectivity, if that's scoring if it's more than 2 miles, it's scoring 40 points already for the length of the ask. That's going to disqualify just tons of things just based on length, and I don't see a safety component there. So I think there are things we can do to tweak that in conjunction with going to a system of not pre-approved, but whatever, pre-approved routes that exist. And we're probably not going to get there quick because we're going to have to hear from the townships and what sections they want, and you guys can push them. But I think that's a positive way to move forward where everybody gets their needs served. So.
Thank you. And somebody with more Robert's Rules knowledge than me, we would vote at this point, right? There's no debate? All right. Thank you. We are voting on a motion to table the original motion for the 1,000. It would come back. We would continue this discussion in the future with some more information. I would suspect and request that our staff bring back some more information based on the discussion here today so that we have a little bit more policy language that we can debate. Is there a question? Is it a clarification question? There is no debate.
Okay,
so
go ahead. We'll vote on that.
All right. All those in favor of tabling the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed, say nay. I see no opposition. So did you have a follow-up comment?
Yes, is it possible to form some type of committee? We got people from the east side and the west side of the county to work with staff and go through these maps and say, okay, we don't want this parcel open of the county road system. They know it better than anybody, I guess. Is that possible to form some type of committee for that?
I guess, go ahead.
Staff understand the intent to engage stakeholders. I would caution you against forming a committee because then we'll need to have an open meeting agenda and minutes. So I think we hear you. Engage stakeholders, including the ATV groups at some point in this map generation process. We can come back at your next meeting with some revised criteria and kind of a step-by-step process as to what we think we would go through to get the map in front of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would caution, I think we need to have, I think this is the committee for the discussion to occur, and I think it's good having the representatives from the public here as well as part of the conversation, so.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So just two quick little comments on looking at some of our maps. So with the road usage, the ADT, just looking in the districts that I represent and in that area, when you get into that less than 1,000 or less than 1,250, there's a couple long segments there that get broken up. So that would be one way, something to consider. That would not be in favor of that because you're going to have these very small breaks in a couple of roads. The second thing is, and Supervisor Johnson mentioned it, I believe, talking about the east and west, or whoever was talking about the east and west, or the west side. The western part of the county, we have long segments We have long mileage, so where the eastern part, they don't necessarily have that. So the long segment criteria is something that I would certainly suggest be reviewed. So, thank you.
All right, thank you for the discussion today. We will continue this next month. Going to move on to...
Mr. Chair, I do have another motion on the ATV, and we talked about hours of operation, which is different than that. I would make a motion that we open up the hours of operation from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. year-round.
Is there a second? Or go ahead.
Tabled in this meeting.
Oh,
The agendized item was tabled.
I think the agendized item was tabled to the next meeting, so I'm not sure this motion would be in order at this time.
thank you for that. We'll continue that conversation. I think that needs to be a part of our ordinance as well. Wouldn't that be our more ordinance discussion than our policy of use of county highway system?
I believe so, because it's part of our ordinance right now. That is the the 1 hour after sunset. So, and I don't know how that works with if our ordinance overrides the 2433 statute. That's the DNR is half hour. I don't know if we have a override power on that. I guess that's a question for you.
We can't be more restrictive than state law, so we don't have an override power. But as long as we're consistent with state law and not more restrictive, then we're okay.
They'll be less restrictive, so.
Right.
Thank you.
And I guess I should clarify, if we're going less restrictive and it's conflicting with state law, we can't make an ordinance that is less restrictive as well. We have to be consistent with state law. So if we are looking to lessen what the state law requirement is, we can't do that either, if that makes sense.
Well, if I may, could you define and just embellish on that a little bit? So give us some hours, I mean, what does that mean?
So without looking at the 2333 statute, whatever it says on hours of operation is what we should do, or what we should have.
We can talk about this more in more detail
Okay,
in the future.
Thanks.
So we're going to move on to item 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. A, amending section 7.125 General Code of Ordinances related to the designation of ATV, UTV routes and trails and regulations of ATV, UTV operation within Marathon County. I guess looking through the packet, I don't know, is this amended language in the packet somewhere?
This was the correction that you're going to talk, but if you're going to talk about time restrictions, I would suggest tabling until you have all those questions done.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Does anybody have an issue with tabling this at this time, bringing it back next month? Just some background on this. This was set to go to county board. There was just some discussion on it, whether, what's required and making sure that we're compliant with state statutes. So there's no time frame, no time rush on this. So let's bring that back and we can have this discussion in September. Mr. Lang, you want to say something?
Yeah, part of the revision that was going to county board was related to driver license requirements on the trail system. And I guess if we're gonna put something together for you for next month, if there was some guidance on that, there were 2 sections of that 7.125. One is operations on the road system, where this committee discussed requiring a driver's license because they're operating on roads. And the other one was operating on a trail system, which allows 12 to 15-year-olds with their ATV certification to operate. But the original text had still included, if you were 16, that you needed a driver's license. And it made it more restrictive. You could be 15 and operate legally, but then 16, if you didn't have a driver's license, according to our code, you couldn't operate legally. So that was one of the big questions that came up in some discussions is, was that truly the intention, or was that just carryover verbiage that came down into that trail system? I don't want to I don't do state law interpretation, but my understanding from past experience going through it is to operate on a trail system, if you're born after 1988, you need to have a state certification, safety certification, but they do not have a driver's license requirements that I'm aware of. And then our techs carried that over and had it in there. So the question was if we should revise that text and just basically reference all of the state statutes, which Mike could probably weigh in on if that's a easier and safer and better way to go, or if you truly intended to keep a driver's license requirement for the trail system, which I believe is more restrictive than the state code on it.
Yeah, and I would just ask that staff work with Corp Counsel between now and our next meeting to get whatever, get everything clarified so that we're meeting our requirements. Moving on to item 6, educational presentations and committee discussion. A, ransomware presentation. Jerry, go ahead. It's your call. I'll leave it up to the committee. Do you want to hear this presentation today? It's about 15, 20 minutes, or we want to move it on to our September meeting?
Move it on.
Hearing nobody else,
Move it on. Move it on.
we will push this item to our next meeting. Sorry, Jerry.
Problem, just as long as you flood discussion.
Well, I don't know that I can make that promise. We'll go to item 6B, updates from CCIT Director.
I think I'll just save them for next time, and I'll just do that.
Okay. Item,
Actually, wait, I do want to say something, sorry. I do want to say something. Is that okay?
yep, go ahead.
So the big project that we have in front of us is the ERP project, the Enterprise Resource Planning. That's replacing our financial system and our human resource systems. I'm anticipating having all of the costs pretty close by the end of this week, and we're expecting to go in front of Finance and Personnel again they received some information about it at their last meeting. They're going to receive some more on the 10th. We're going to, unless things change, I think Kurt and Lance are anticipating that at the county board meeting on the 19th, we would give a presentation basically explaining why we're interested in doing the project and why we want to move forward with it now. It's a very expensive project, but we'd like to be able to sign a contract for that in September, hopefully, which would be committing us to spending payments in 2021, 2022, and then finishing in 2023. And so if that happens on the 19th, we would be voting on it, you guys would all be voting on it on the 24th. So that's, you'll be seeing a lot more of that in those next couple of meetings. Any questions on that?
Any questions in general for Jerry? Thank you for that update. Move on to item 6C, WCA Transportation Committee update.
What? Batteries out.
Supervisor Robinson.
I have the pleasure of serving on the Wisconsin Counties Association Transportation Committee. We had a meeting on July 28th, and we considered a couple of proposals. One was from Eau Claire, dealing with, one was from Walworth County, dealing with amendment to the Wisconsin statutes amending an exemption for public works contracts requirements for counties that receive donated improvements, which would allow us to basically receive that without following all of the appropriate bidding and other requirements, and that was adopted. There was a second resolution that was put forth by Ashland County requesting the state of Wisconsin to allow counties to impose a gas tax to support county government services. That was turned down. The feeling was that it didn't specify that it went into highway funding. There were concerns about counties like Marathon, where you've got Marshfield and both Wood and Marathon counties. How would it be implemented? And we thought that it was better to try to focus in on general transportation aids increases with the state. We also received updates from Dan Bauer and Dan Federer relative to activities on the state and federal level. With the new state transportation budget, there's a 2% increase in general transportation aids. There's a 3.6% increase in state highway maintenance monies. There are other programs that I think you've seen, the TDA Then we had a discussion on the federal infrastructure bill and the difference between infrastructure and hard infrastructure and human infrastructure. And that bill subsequently has passed, or excuse me, is being considered in the U.S. Senate. Jim was there, and Jim gave we had a discussion on highway safety and other issues, and I'll defer to Jim on that.
We have some papers currently out there supported by Senator Petruski, and I don't know who's his co-author yet, I believe somebody from Lincoln County, that we are going to be presenting here for, it's a couple parts of work zone safety. One is to allow just municipal only to have flashing green and amber lights on our vehicles. It's been proven that the green light is more visible, especially in a winter storm, so we want to have legislation allowing us to do that. We like to talk to the legislation about giving us the same rights as the school bus drivers in a work zone. If somebody blows through our work zone or stops slow paddle, that we can take down that information and report him to the local officer. And then the third one we are looking at is having a mandatory 1/2 hour of driver's education about work zones. So we're presenting those, and hopefully we can get a hearing on those sometime later this fall.
Any questions on that update? Seeing none, let's move on to item 6D, Commissioner's Report. Anything additional to add?
Yeah, I just have 2 items I'd like to add to that. Yesterday we had a highway safety meeting. Year-to-date, Marathon County has 11 fatalities compared to 3 last year at this time. So we've seen a great uptick here in Marathon County. Meanwhile, the statewide average is down 10.4% from 318 last year to 285 this year. I had made myself a note that next month we could do a full report on county statistics, but seeing what's all on the agenda, maybe November, December, that'd be more appropriate. And the other thing I presented to administration and to our HR department, and it's going to go to a finance meeting here, is the highway department requested a pay grade to our B32, which is our highway supervisors. A recent survey of 10 lake counties such as Eau Claire, La Crosse, Washington, Outagamie, Brown showed that their midpoint for their supervisors was $3 more than our maximum. We're about $8 behind all those other counties for our supervisors. I'm about to lose 2 of my more experienced supervisors are considering taking positions at other counties, and I feel strongly that we should not lose people here in Marathon County due to wages and being that great of a difference. So administration and HR are both in support of raising the maximum from $32.36 to $37.62, which is still behind most of our lake counties, but it's getting us closer. This will be on the September HR and Finance meeting, so I hope you support that. And along with that, I also request that Marathon County take a look at doing a full weight study across the county in 2022. When we went with the pay grades last time was set, we promised all the employees that we would review this every 3 to 5 years. That has not been done. We are falling way behind other counties. A few years back, when I would have a job application out, 10 years ago, I'd have 150 people apply. 4 or 5 years, 3 years ago, I would have 50 apply. My current recruitment right now, I have 9 applicants. One of them was a real good, strong applicant. The other ones were marginal. We decided to interview 3, and one of them didn't show up for the interview this morning. So with our wages, they can go, at this time, people are going to factory jobs over county positions, which I feel strongly that the county needs to reevaluate that, just not for my department, for the entire county. So that is my report. Otherwise, everything else was in the packet.
Any questions? Supervisor Christensen.
Yeah, I just have a simple question. What do you start your employees out as, a regular road worker, driver, whatever?
$18.99.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you for your report. Moving on to item 7A, future meetings and agenda items. Next meeting will be September 2nd, 2021.
Randy?
Yes.
Our September meeting, we always have a bridge aid. They're due September 1st, so for us to get that together by September 2nd is impossible because we're first receiving them that night. So we have either two choices. If you'd want to move the meeting back until the 9th, we could have them available for that time. Or last year, you had a special meeting before the county board to approve those, approve the 2021 bridge aid resolution, so.
I guess my preference would be that we'd move the date back, just considering it is the Thursday before Labor Day weekend, but I'll open up. Anybody have any thoughts? Well, Jerry's out of town, so we'll have to push his reports back.
Somebody else have to change the batteries.
Yeah.
The only concern that I would have is, are there issues that will be going before HR Finance? Because that will put it out of sync, because the HR Finance will meet that, that before.
The only thing that will be on HR Finance from Highway will be what we talked about today that didn't need approval because it's according to HR. And then the other thing is a succession plan will be on this September 10th meeting, which you have already approved in June.
Kevin?
If we do with the 9th, you probably won't get the information that you'd be approving there until that meeting. Just like Jim said, on the 1st, we get a bunch of those, and if there's any questions or anything to resolve, I won't be able to get that data on the 1st, put it together a week ahead of time, and ship it out with your original packets. It takes a solid week after that deadline. There's 20-some projects to get all of that together and try to get it QC'd and checked properly. So it would be a game time rolling up that morning for everybody.
Supervisor Seiler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm, when you say move it out, are you saying September 9th?
September 9th.
Okay. And with that, just to let you know, I have at the same time, the ADRC board meets. And so, I mean, if you've got a quorum, not an issue, but just to make you aware, I hate to choose. So so if the 9th is, Jim, geez. Okay. I'm not real sure, can see what's on that agenda too. So just to let you know, I can only be in one place. We'll see.
At this time, we'll plan on having a single meeting on September 9th, but watch your emails, please. In terms of agenda items, we'll be returning most of our agenda items from this meeting. It's government progress at its finest. Yeah. So with that being said, I am looking for adjournment, a motion. We have a motion by Gums, second by Robinson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time today.